You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
Comics XF Interview Podcast, the show where two best friends talk about comics with the people who make them. I'm Dan Grote.
And I'm Matt Lazowitz.
And this week's guest is the writer of the upcoming Killer Influences from IDW and Power Rangers Unlimited from Boom Studios, Joey Esposito. Welcome back, Joey.
Hello, thanks for having me. It's always a blast to be here.
So before we get started, I was very specifically told, recently I attended the Trenton Charity Comic-Con, where Sean Van Gorman, who you have worked with, and Chris Miskevitz, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly. Miskevich, there we go. Yep. We're tabling, and I picked up a couple copies of issues of Pedestrian and mentioned you were going to be on the show, and they wanted me. They assured me that you are the worst person in comics, and wanted to make sure that I told you that they said that. So,
thank you.
Just passing on the message.
I concur. I'm the absolute worst, and those guys are the best. So, but I'm glad that you went. That's cool. That's a cool show that they do, and I would expect nothing less from Sean and Chris. So, just like constantly just giving each other shit all the time.
We all have those friends. The show's not far from where my wife works, so she had to go up on that Sunday. So I was like, all right, well, she had to go up that weekend. I was like, well, if you go up on Sunday, I can drive up with you. You can leave me at the convention for a couple hours and then drive back with me, which she was perfectly happy to do.
Sweet. Sounds like a dream, honestly.
Work well.
Lovely afternoon. So, Joey, I saw you have a garage drum kit. How often do you get to play, and what do you prefer to play?
My drums prior to owning a house had been basically in storage for a long time. And like anytime I wanted to play, I would rent a studio space or whatever. But that's like kind of my exercise these days is like just go in the garage for 90 minutes and just, play an album straight through. I mean, to the best of my ability. It's not, I'm not a pro, but yesterday I was playing the album Whatever Happened to PJ Souls by Local H. Sometimes I just go back to old faves like Nirvana and Foo Fighters and stuff like that, just to like get my heart rate up and get sweaty and have a good time and relive my early 20s. So
on that same vein, are you wearing that Letters to Cleo shirt that Ben Wyatt would wear on Parks and Rec?
Yeah, wow. Would a depressed person make this? Yeah, for sure. My wife got this for me a few years ago. And then like when I was unemployed and laid off and stuff, I would just wear this every day and just, made it feel better, like, because it was funny.
Eat some calzones, work on your claymation. Yeah, absolutely.
Calzone betrayed me. Yeah, I love Ben Wyatt. I think he's like one of the most relatable characters on television. And obviously that episode is just like an all-time classic. And then to pay it off years later with having Letters to Cleo on the show, just so good. So
absolutely good. Yeah. We did an April Fool's episode one year where we just decided we were just going to spend an hour talking about a random episode of Parks and Rec. I think it was the first Treat Yourself.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself. Yes. So good. And it's amazing like how that, I don't know if Galentine's Day originated with Parks and Rec, but like I don't remember seeing it before that episode. And now like Galentine's Day, I see all the time. I see Treat Yourself all the time. It's cool how that show has like subtly infiltrated culture. I get a kick out of that.
It was weird to see it in a Domino's pizza commercial though. I will say that.
Wait, I'm gonna need more information. I don't know this.
Basically, Retta comes up to the counter and the two employees behind the counter just start quoting that, Treat Yourself, that episode at her. And she basically kind of grimaces her way through it while being paid to do so.
That's really funny. Good for her. I love that.
I got a copy of it and haven't gotten to around to read it yet because unsurprisingly, my to read pile of books is the only thing larger of prose is the only thing larger than my to read pile of graphic novels. But Jim O'Heir, Jerry, wrote a book about his
Yeah,
time on Parks and Rec, and it is sitting there, and it's like, I just need to put that near the top because I'm sure it will warm my heart. And
yeah.
that,
I haven't read it, but it's also like in my on my list. But I imagine that's probably going to be like a pretty light, breezy, fun read versus, a lot of my like prose reading is nonfiction stuff that's like really fucking grim and dark all the time. And so every once in a while I have to find a book like that that's just like it's going to be fun to read and not hard to read and just like warm my heart a little bit. So let me know how it is if you pick it up.
will do.
Like when Matt describes his to read piles because they just sound like a fire hazard.
Oh, they are. Oh, they are.
Listen,
That's
man,
why I
I
had to move
understand.
them into the attic, because if I kept them in the bedroom, one of the cats would knock into them, and I would have a cat buried under a stack of books.
Complete calamity. I
Most
understand.
safe
I
and the most
listen.
haunted part of my house.
I understand this dilemma well. It's just there's never enough space. There's never enough time to read everything, and you get really like cocky with what you think you'll be able to in a night or whatever. Be my list, and then soon it's just like, okay, I have to admit defeat and put
Yeah.
some shit back.
Oh yeah.
So I'm right.
The,
I'm
the
right there with you.
nightstand stack, the stack on the end table by the couch, which and the book
Yep.
that whatever I'm currently reading that sort of travels with me. And it's like that one just kind of gets put with them, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, I'll just read a little bit of this, and it's like, but you're not reading the stuff that you have specifically for whatever. I'll get through all of it at some point.
I love that. I love that you mentioned the
Hmm.
sub piles because it's like it's not just the main pile. Like you can't see, but I have a sub pile right here. I have a sub pile right here. There's a sub pile downstairs. But it all makes sense in your head, and we do the best that we can.
Absolutely.
We are all Burgess Meredith in that one Twilight Zone.
Yeah, exactly.
But there was
Forever.
time now.
Oh man, great
So
episode.
Oh, one of
you
those.
have two comics that are both launching on July 1st.
Mhm.
How will you make your friends and loved ones celebrate Joey Esposito Day?
Oh man, I feel like I do that all the time. So I'm gonna leave it alone for my friends and family. I think they're real fucking sick of me like hey, comics, and for example, the year the pedestrian trade was coming out on like our Christmas card, I put a QR code to Barnes and Noble to buy it, which is like I thought was funny, but then like people like my neighbors who like we're neighbors, we're friendly, we're not close, but then I was like over their house and they had it on the shelf, and I was like, oh shit, you definitely bought this from our Christmas card, which I thought was hysterical. So in that way, I've eased back on like spamming friends and family about comic stuff, but I will celebrate myself by going to purchase my own books at my local comic book store and just having a nice lunch or something. But it is like it's pretty wild to have two books coming out on the same day when like it feels like for years you're just trying to get anything out the door, and now there's like two books coming out at once, which is exciting. But I also kind of wish they were like spread out a little bit, so I could always have something to talk about instead of they both come out at once and then they're done. But it's very cool. I'm very excited.
That's excellent. Well, let's start. We're going to talk about both of them, but let's start talking about
Okay.
Killer Influences, which is your new IDW Crime series with art by Valeria Berzo, colors by Inaki Azpiazu, and letters by Alex Ray. Matt, dial M for murder, but also mass market emails.
Melvin is a serial killer who aspires to be one of the most infamous to ever do it, a true American nightmare. His problem? He's so efficient and methodical that he doesn't have a brand. No one has connected his crimes, except for Kylie, an aspiring true crime influencer who is flailing at a small town newspaper. When she comes across Melvin's crimes and reaches out to him, she figures out she's going to become a star. She will give Melvin the identity he needs to be the iconic serial killer he wants to be, while she follows his exploits on her channel and becomes famous. Kylie and Melvin make a pact that will make their dreams come true and destroy their lives in the process.
Hell yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
So, what is the origin of this project?
The origin of Killer Influences started when the editor, Dave Wilgus, who I had worked with previously on Batman stuff while he's at DC, brought the idea to me. So essentially, like the way that IDW Crime was approaching these first slate of books was like they had a premise and then they hired writers to flesh it out and develop it. So they came to me with this idea of like true crime influencer teams up with a serial killer. And that was essentially the log line, the elevator pitch. And then from there, I took it and developed like the narrative and the characters and the setting and the themes and all that stuff. But it came to me at a, I read a lot of true crime. I read a lot of nonfiction. But when Dave brought this to me, I had been in the middle of reading, as we were talking about, two different books. And one was a book called Murderland by Caroline Fraser, which is really great. And then another book, I forget the title of it, but it's like a memoir by this guy, Paul Holes, who, if you read like I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, he's mentioned a lot as part of like the cold case. He's a cold case innovator who ultimately helped catch the Golden State Killer with the help of Michelle McNamara. And that book is like pretty self-aggrandizing, not great. I'm talking about the Paul Holes book. He's very aware of his accomplishments and makes it known, versus like Murderland, the other book that I was reading, which is part memoir, part true crime, part like thesis on the impact of environmental pollution potentially on some of the most notorious serial killers we've ever heard of. She ties it all back into the Pacific Northwest and like poison from the lead smelting plants that were there that have settled into the community and things, and how a bunch of the most notorious serial killers had connections back to that area. And so this idea comes to me while I'm like ingesting both of these books, which I feel like was kismet in a lot of ways, because I was just like already kind of in this zone of thinking about serial killers and their MO and all that dark stuff. But then also like with the Paul Holes side of it, like the promotional side, of like, look at all the good I've done by this work that I've done in the past. And not to like minimize his accomplishments or anything like that. He's clearly very, very important. He's done some important things, but like just the tone of it was like, felt a little gross to me. And so I was thinking about that a lot while developing this story, and then like, diving into the true crime influencer arena, which is its own horrific nightmare. It is sort of all just like got synthesized into what Killer Influences became.
You dropped the name Anne Rule in the first issue. And did you ever read any of those Anne Rule books? Because I remember shelves of them back in my Borders days.
There's a ton. Here's one right here.
Oh wow! There you go.
So this is like
that was the big one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
this is the big one. This is like the sacred text of true crime in a lot of ways. This and like In Cold Blood, I would say. She's got a bunch, and she's a great writer. But I think The Stranger Beside Me in particular is like the story, much like the Caroline Fraser book. It's part memoir, part history, nonfiction. But basically, her story was that she was a crime writer who was writing for like pulp magazines and things, like True Detective and whatever. And she was volunteering at like a crisis center, like a suicide hotline essentially, and became friends with someone that she worked with there, who later would be revealed was Ted Bundy. And so like she had a close personal friendship with Ted Bundy and was like communicating with him throughout, the years in which he was murdering these women, but also like once he was caught and like on trial and things like that, he was still like writing her and things and, you know, communicating. And so it's a lot of like untangling this idea of the people that we think we know versus the secret life that they have, you know. So that one is, I think, fantastic. It's a great read and a foundational text, I would say, for anyone who is like interested in this kind of reporting. So I definitely had to like name drop a little bit in issue one.
And obviously there's plenty of books out there. I guess, how much time did you spend kind of listening to like true crime podcasts and like videos that are out there? Because there are an exhausting amount of them, it feels like, as a
Truly,
person
no,
who
you're
doesn't
right.
consume that.
It's true because it's just there's just so much, and I think like the podcast thing specifically, you know, like after Serial came out, it
Yeah.
exploded. And Serial is great, and there's like a lot of great audio investigative journalism. You know, my wife is a huge public radio nerd, so she's always been helpful in like pointing me in the direction of good podcasts that like aren't just speculative. But what I found was like really digging into the sort of more citizen sleuth or like my favorite murder type of things where it's like, I don't know, it just they walk this line that's really gross to me of just like they're not always centering victims. They're like poring over crime scene details and just like they'll say that they're not like glorifying serial killers or violence, but like their content sort of suggests otherwise to me. You know, it's just like I don't know. I think it's gross to see, especially people who are like commenting in real time on stuff. The Savannah Guthrie's missing mother case is a recent example that was happening while I was like writing this book, and just seeing people online just like speculate wildly with no evidence and no like real journalistic integrity of any kind, and just like positing theories, you know. It just that part is the thing that we're satirizing in Killer Influences of like, you know, anyone with a following on the internet who talks about something confidently and authoritatively is going to be believed by somebody, you know. And we're seeing that not just in true crime, obviously, like that's a fundamental problem with society at this moment. It's kind of gotten us to our current political situation, all that stuff. Like it's bigger than just true crime, but that's sort of where I was coming from on this. Yeah.
Is there a serial killer or killers that you have found, favored is the wrong word, so I'm not going to phrase it that way, but like,
I have not favored any of them. I
okay,
promise.
wonderful, that are, I guess, more fascinating to read about.
I think Bundy is one of those because not only because of Ann Rule's book, but just like I think he's sort of in a lot of ways the epitome of like challenging our expectations of what a serial killer looks like. You know, he's by all accounts like very charismatic, very friendly, very kind, you know, but obviously wasn't. And that's like fucking terrifying to me. And I think one of the most interesting things about this whole dynamic is that often there's two very distinct lives. You know, there's their personal life, or another example is like the BTK killer. He was also like a minister or something. Like he was involved in the church and the community, and meanwhile he's like committing some of the most horrific acts I've ever read about. And so like that dichotomy is really interesting to me. And I think it's important to like try to understand in whatever way we can the psychology of a disturbed person like this. Something else that I read a lot of was like John Douglas's books. He's the guy who the show Mindhunter was sort of like based around. So he's like really influential in like FBI profiling and that sort of thing. So like he has a great book called The Killer Across the Table. That's essentially like him interviewing, like while incarcerated, interviewing serial killers and, you know, just like violent people and just trying to dissect how their mind works. And I don't know that anything is like totally accurate because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a sociologist or a psychologist, but like as a layman, it seems to me like something is fundamentally just like broken in these sort of people, you know, in a way that I'm not sure any rational human being can truly understand. But I think like reading different accounts um, of the same killers or the same investigators can be helpful in sort of like getting a fuller picture of what their lives were like.
And how do you come at that as a writer when one of your focal characters is that? It's one of the reasons why I personally tend to find stories where the Joker is the protagonist
Mm,
difficult, because you shouldn't be sitting there and empathizing with the Joker. It's
right,
why James Tynion's book was his Joker series was really a Jim Gordon series about Gordon and the Joker, and that works because you can empathize and sympathize with Gordon, and you probably shouldn't with the Joker.
right.
I don't know how much you really want to be empathizing or sympathizing with Melvin, but at the same time, he is a focal point of view character. So you have
Yeah.
to kind of come at that from a slightly different angle than, mwah ha ha, he's the villain.
Right. For sure. Yeah. And that was part of definitely part of the challenge of doing this project, but also part of the appeal was just like to challenge myself to see if I could do that. And like, you know, we'll see how readers react. But I think my main entry point was really through Kylie, the protagonist, who's like also doing terrible things and making terrible decisions, but has an element where you can kind of see where she's coming from. And yes, she's making these terrible decisions, but why is she doing that? And I think the why is the thing that we can relate to as a human being, even as we're like seeing her make poor choices. But I think watching her make those poor choices in turn make the book feel a little more tense and suspenseful, hopefully. So hopefully it all like I'm hoping that readers can like go for the ride and see where it takes them, and then when it's over, decide if they actually like either of these characters. I mean, they're not going to like Melvin. Melvin is a bad dude, and we don't try to make him a hero or anything like that. We try to present like his circumstances maybe, but I don't think there's anything redeemable about him personally. But hopefully, when the story is over, you can kind of look at the full picture and see, you know, whether or not Kylie's decisions were worthwhile or could have happened a different way, which almost certainly they probably could have. But you know, it's ultimately the end of the day a story about like a quest for fame and you know being seen or respected in your chosen field, which is something I feel like I can relate to as the writer of the book. Like, while I'm not making true crime content or trying to be an influencer, like just the nature of like creating something and wanting people to like it, I think is like inherently relatable. And would I team up with a serial killer to like sell a comic? I don't think so. But like, I don't know, what if that presented itself and I was in a dark place and you know, people don't really know what they'll do. And I think that's something about the crime genre in general that is so appealing is it forces you to self-analyze a little bit or like read, you know, because a lot of these stories are just regular people who become immortalized because of this terrible thing that happened to them or that they did. But really, they're just like living their lives and are presented with like either an opportunity or, you know, a threat of some kind and make a poor choice. And it's like, I think we're all a lot closer to making a deadly poor choice than we are like becoming rich and famous or anything like that. And so when those two things line up, I think it's very dangerous.
Eden County, where Killer Influence is set, reminds me a little of Summer City from The Pedestrian in that it's
Yeah.
that small town America where there's a differing degree of kind of an undercurrent of hopelessness. You know, Eden County probably even more economically depressed. You know, it's got that dying factory town
Yeah.
vibe to it. Did think that kind of thinking about towns like this, which are very real and all over the U.S., kind of does that actually kind of translate for like, say, let's say writing about Gotham as you have?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think it's all, like this is a recurring theme I've only recently discovered in my work, and like the small town that people are desperate to get out of because it's depressed or financially ruined or whatever. I mean, that's like where I grew up. So that's why pedestrian has that element, and I think killer influences that element is certainly present. And I do think that, like, yes, you could apply. I think in anything that you do, you have to sort of filter your own experience into the world that you're creating or that you're working in. So for like Gotham, for example, like, it's not going to be a one-to-one with my hometown, but there's like elements that I can take and wonder what those would be like if I'm working in the Gotham City space. So there's definitely things like that that I think can be applied across the board, but in different ways. Ultimately, I think what's important to me is like the feeling of like living in a place like this where you're just so fucking desperate to leave. Like, for me, it was like counting down until I graduated high school so I could peace out, and I think that's true for a lot of people. And I think there's definitely characters like that who live in, like, can you imagine living in Gotham City and you're just like, it's fucking sucks all the time. Right now, it's like, I think like they're doing the poison ivy overgrown, like, like that sucks. Like every few months you're dealing with a new catastrophe. Like, of course you would want to leave there if you're like a sane person. So I could see that for sure.
I've thought a lot about that. The why do people stay in Gotham? And this is one of those comparisons that makes me a little uncomfortable because it's a little too real.
Mm,
But you could say, why do people stay in Kiev?
mm.
There is this mindset of this is my home and I'm not letting anyone drive me out of it, whether
Sure.
it is an aggressive revanchist neighbor or a clown who likes to kill people.
Right. So like there's a lot of circumstances for individuals, but in terms of that, I would say like I think that's something that's a what you're talking about is a reason why I don't think of like Marvel comics in the same way. Like people who live in New York, because we know for a fact that New Yorkers would be like, fuck you. Like, get out of my way. I gotta go get to the office. Like subway, you're just causing shit for the subway. You know what I mean? Like New Yorkers can deal with that kind of shit. And I think it works really well in terms of explaining why people live there in the Marvel universe. But then like in a fictional city, it's harder to make those things gel a little bit more. But I do think that you're right. And also sometimes like in the example you gave, I'm sure like people can't leave. They're trapped there for economic reasons or family reasons or whatever, health reasons, whatever it could be. So it's not always just like if I could just get some $1,000 to get a ticket out of here and I'll be good. Often it's like more complicated than that.
I'm in the middle of rereading No Man's Land, so that's very present in my head of like,
Excellent.
why didn't these people get? Oh yeah, because there are any number of reasons why you can't get out.
Yeah. And I
I
think
believe
it's
there
easy
were
to lose sight of
bridges
that
at that point,
sometimes.
Matt.
Well, right, yeah, but in the days leading up to No Man's Land, people, if you could leave, you did, I suppose. I mean, it's not like Gotham even has like Superman who comes and fixes your buildings. It's like no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, there's a little bit less immediate like reconstruction around there.
and it's just one thing after another. If it's not a vines, it's a plague, it's a quake, it's a Joker war, it's a
Yeah,
thing.
truly. Yeah, seems like the rent would be low, but I bet it's not.
The problem is the insurance rates are so damn high.
Well, not only that, but every time a building or property gets destroyed, some rich non-Bruce Wayne fucker is buying that shit up and turning
Oh
it
yeah,
into like Airbnb condos or something.
for
Mm.
sure. But again, who's vacationing in Gotham is another question that I have.
The
Like,
the
ooh,
people who
this
listen to the true crime podcasts who
actually, yeah,
want to be able to say that the true crime tourism in Gotham has to be through the roof. The
that's a
people
great point.
being led around like, and this is where the Joker committed his first murder. And here is the courthouse where Harvey Dent got acid thrown in his face. And this is the park bench where they found Mr. Zaz's first victim.
Yeah.
I say this as a guy who literally went on the Devil in the White City tour when I was in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
I'm not a big true crime person, but Devil in the White City was absolutely fascinating. H.H. Holmes fascinates me, and it's also
Yeah.
far enough away in the past that it feels a little less ghoulish.
Yeah,
And
I
people
understand.
who are, who died a few years ago and their families are very much still alive.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I would go on that Gotham tour, to be honest. But it would be in poor taste. But sometimes poor taste is okay. But that's only because it's like a fictional city with fictional victims, you know? And I think like it gets ugly when we're fetishizing like the killers over like the loss of the families and just like this tragic loss of life, you know? So yeah.
What are some of your crime comics touchstones that are not by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips?
I knew you were going to say that. I mean, obviously they're very influential, just generally speaking, crime or otherwise, both of those artists are very important to me. But I think the Darwin Cook Parker adaptations are up there for sure. Those are really fucking fantastic. I read a lot of crime fiction in general. Like Lawrence Block is one of my favorite writers, and his Matthew Scudder detective books are just like out of this world, I think. And his Keller series also. Comics wise, I don't know. I'm gonna take a look at my shelf and see what we got. Oh, I have. I don't know if you remember, like 2010 or 2009, Vertigo did like they did like these small hardcover digest size books of Vertigo crime. And there's one that I love. It's called Area 13. Wait, is that what it's called?
Uh, that sounds right. It's
Area 13 was Chris Somney and
yes,
Christos Gage.
yes.
Yeah, that one I really loved. What else could I? 100 Bullets, of course. Like, you know, basically any like 90s, early 2000s Vertigo crime adjacent stuff I was super into. But then also like all the Brubaker and Sean Phillips stuff.
Yeah. I do feel, especially now that they are working in like they release almost everything as hardcover graphic novels.
Hmm.
I feel like Brubaker and Phillips specifically are like filling up middle-aged comics guys' shelves the way like our dads would fill their shelves with like, I don't know, Jace Patterson, John Grisham, Tom Clancy,
Tom
like
Clancy,
that.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's
Robert
it's
B.
definitely
Parker.
like, yeah, it's like it's going that direction for sure. But like they're just so fucking good. Like every time, it's just like I like I just I loved Criminal when it launched in like 2005 or six or whenever that was. But like if you would ask me then if I would still be reading it 20 years later, I would be like, I mean, probably not. It's probably like 5 years max. But here we are, and like the TV show is about to happen, and I'm sure that'll start a whole new like hopefully like some popularity of their work and to dive in. But yeah, it's their output is insane to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it.
And they're just each one is so distinct. I mean, the world is the same, obviously, but the different characters, the different voices, and like I just finished 5 Years in Reverse, the most recent, and
Nice.
I'm reading this and I'm just like I'm cringing throughout because oh Ricky Lawless, like oh how can you dig up, stupid, dig up.
I love that. So you're so invested. It's great. And I think that's like this is like an aside, but I think you know I think they're one of the few like long running things that are still going right now. And I think that's something that we're missing that I think can be especially effective in crime comics is just like being so invested for so long. You know, whether that's a long form comic series or a TV show, you know, like I don't know, people still love Law and Order, and like that's fucking season 35 or whatever. and it's because like they like the detective characters. Like I don't know that anyone's super invested in the whodunit aspects anymore because I don't know, it just seems like you're gonna figure it out at the 25-minute mark and then like, there's an act break and blah blah blah. But like I think having investment in characters that you care about, that you don't want them to make poor decisions, you don't want anything bad to happen to them, is really important in terms of like your relationship to the reader. And just so many books now don't get a lot of opportunity to blossom into something like that. So I'm hopeful that like the new Vertigo line, for example, will deliver on what they're saying is going to be a return to that, because we also see like comic retailers saying the same thing. Like readers don't necessarily want to pick up issue 1 if they think it's not going to last beyond issue 5. That's a really real issue.
So
But
I feel like I've been having this conversation more and more, both on the show and like in the Comics XF Slack and stuff. I think we're starting to see that turnaround. It's
yeah, I
not
too.
pervasive yet, and I think Marvel especially has not learned that lesson yet. They're still canceling series at issue 10, but like if you just go over to DC, all the absolute titles are now like almost all the absolute titles now
Yeah,
are like in the 20s.
trucking along. And
Yeah,
like Absolute
exactly.
Batman, like issue 21 or whatever, sold a shitload. And like that should be enough to be like, oh, maybe readers want to invest long term. Like that's
Mhm.
part of the fun of serialized comics, is like going every month to see what's going to happen next. And selfishly, like as a creator, I would love the opportunity to do something that's like I know that I'm going to have X amount of time to like really dig into character and have like some of my favorite Why the Last Man issues, for example, are like
Mhm.
those issues between arcs that are just like one shots of like a side story or just like a one-off tale with Yorick and in the past or whatever. Just like really being able to like flesh out the world that you're living in. And it's hard to do that in 5 to 6 issues, or 3 in the case of Killer Influences. But we do the best that we can.
So, getting it back to that place, have you gotten to check out what some of your colleagues are doing in the other IDW crime series, Seven
Yeah,
Wives and whatnot?
Seven Wives and Fixation, they're both great. And like I think all 3 of these like launch books are totally different from each other, which I think is really fun and cool. So I'm excited to see like hopefully people buy all of them, but I'm excited to see particular readers like which books sort of pique their interest more. I would say Killer of Blues is probably the the more they're all very grim, but like more satirical, I guess, and certainly very very bloody as it goes on, gory maybe. But yeah, I think they're all great, wildly like different takes on the crime genre, and hopefully hopefully it's the first of many.
Now that she is a crossover star, has there been any discussion at any level about having Melvin take on Samantha Strong from Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees? Just pit IDW's two serial killers against each other to kill off.
Listen, I think that's a great idea. Like, why not? Just like a one shot of just a face off. That sounds great. But I think that like that book is a great example of like people becoming so invested in this work that they had no choice but to do more. And now like you're seeing characters show up elsewhere, and that's just like that's very rare for a creator-owned series like that, and it's fucking awesome. And it's like legitimately a great book. So it's like certainly I'm down. I think Melvin stands zero chance against against that character, but Melvin sucks, so fuck him.
So if Melvin were in that world, what animal would you want to see Melvin anthropomorphized as?
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, he's definitely I don't know, like my mind goes to like a weasel or a snake, but that feels like too on the nose a little bit. I feel like maybe he is a porcupine. He's very protected from the outside, but like really desperately wants someone to get beyond that outer shell to see what he's really like, even though what he's really like is awful.
There are all those quills. Oh, additional quills.
Exactly.
Oh man. Well, you've also got, it's not the only book you have coming out right now. You've got Power Rangers Unlimited, which you're co-writing with Kenny Porter, drawn by Alessio Zano. Uh, Matt, the classics are classics for a reason, so it's morphin' time.
At a
Love it.
mysterious base on the planet Aquitar, a more phenomenal program is taking shape under the guidance of the eccentric operator and the striking Tiger Unlimited Ranger. Power Rangers from across time and space are called upon to form elite teams and battle a rising evil.
Hell yeah. Gonna be sick. That's all. That's like I can't fucking wait for people to read this book. And you know,
Your
if you
dream
pick up
project,
both,
right?
what's up?
I'm sorry. So this is your dream project, right?
For sure. Yeah, it was like we talked last time about like when I was here for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Zord Quest, how big of a Power Rangers fan I am, and this was definitely like a dream project to cross my desk. And just like all around, even like Boom paired Kenny and I up, whom we hadn't met previously. Certainly, I'd read his work and things like that, but once we talked, it was just like instant connection. Have the same philosophies on making comics, the same kinds of things that we would want to do with a Power Rangers book, and it was just kind of like hit the ground running and had a blast, just like building out this epic series that we're concocting. It's been a lot of fun.
A thing about the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Justice League Unlimited is that they both had theme songs with sick guitar licks.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. To quote Strong Bad, it's Squeedly versus Meadly. Um, can you only write a comic like this with that
Yes.
Ingwie Malmsteen-esque guitar solo like in the back of your head?
Yes. Can I tell you what so I make a playlist for every project that I work on that's like not necessarily like things that people should listen to while they're reading, but the things that like inspire me tonally or story wise or whatever. And my Power Rangers Unlimited playlist is like it's like very Van Halen, Tesla, ZZ Top kind of butt rock esque. Of course, Power Rangers music is mixed in there, but it's a lot of noodling solos and just like fist pumping. Like Atomic Punk by Van Halen, to me is like a perfect Power Rangers song. Like it just gets me so stoked. So for sure, that playlist is all stuff like that. Because when I think of Power Rangers, I do think of just like, you know what I mean? And it's just something that I love about it and is pretty consistent throughout the show. Like even other series have some great theme songs with a lot of ripping guitar riffs, and I love it. Yeah, great question. Best question I've had about Power Rangers so far. I really appreciate it.
Honored. How has co-writing with Kenny been? What are sort of each of you bringing to the table in that dynamic?
It's been really organic, which was cool. Like I've worked with some of my like personal like best friends on stuff, and Kenny and I have figured it out much faster. Like uh basically so we plotted out the first year, of sort of like the basics of like what we want to happen, who the characters and the teams will be for each issue, what every mission is. So I should say that like each issue is kind of standalone. Like there's an overarching story that connects everything together, but every issue changes teams, kind of changes genres even, really just like putting the Power Rangers into a position that we haven't seen them in before and putting them in combinations that we haven't seen them in before. And so once we started talking about it and like plotting things out, it was really smooth sailing, to be honest. So essentially, like we work a lot in Google Docs, collaborating there, and we'll start with like kind of a brain dump of just like here's what happens in this issue, here are the characters, here are the beats, and then we sort of like break that into a page breakdown, and then essentially like we talk about it, and once we're like clear on the beats and the character arcs, and once everything feels like we have a good shape in the outline, then we'll divide and conquer and split up and write our pages, and we bring them back together and just like make sure it all works, and make any tweaks that might be needed, and then we turn it in. And of course, like editorial may have some notes or whatever, but so far we're writing issue 7 right now, and it's trucking along, and it's a lot of fun.
When you have access to every Power Ranger ever, uh, which that's evident from the first issue.
Yeah.
How do you keep things focused and avoid the paralysis of choice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, everything has to be intentional. So for example, so Trini Kwan is our Striking Tiger Limited Ranger. We meet her. She's like in her early 40s. She's like 25 years of being a ranger. She's done this since high school. She's come back to sort of mentor these new teams who are Power Rangers that we know that can be pulled from time and space at any point, sort of in their ranger careers. So I think when we're constructing a mission, so like issue 1's not a great example because it's sort of an introduction. But if there's a mission and there's like certain the heist issue is a great example, which the solicit just came out. So that issue is featuring Z Delgado from Power Rangers SVD, who her backstory, she was like a street thief. It's got Connor from Dino Thunder, and he's kind of like a dum dum, but also like he's basically the Flash. He can run really fast, and so like these sort of characters who have personality traits or skills that are applicable to whatever the mission is, we're kind of functioning as Trini and the operator when we're writing, in that we're like pulling in people who make sense for the mission. And so I think by doing that, it sort of focuses it both in having Trini be like the connective thread through all of this, even though it's like spanning time and space and hundreds of rangers and characters and stuff. But then by focusing it on the team and the mission at hand, I hope will sort of do what you're talking about and make it more palatable for a reader who may not know everything from season 26 of Power Rangers. And that's definitely top of mind for us. That's part of the reason we wanted to use Trini, was to make sure that there was like an invitation in for I would say people who don't know Power Rangers definitely still know the Mighty Morphin characters, or like that design aesthetic in that show. So I think using her as sort of like the mentor figure to bring people in who maybe don't have access to the wider Power Rangers universe, and let her be the character to introduce you to that. I think hopefully that works how we intended.
So Trini, the original Yellow Ranger, has died both in real life and within the lore of Power Rangers. What made y'all want to start, kind of center things on her, at least to start?
For me, Trini, and I sort of like dealt with this a little bit in Zord Quest, or maybe writing Zord Quest helped me like really process this, but she's like the backbone of that original team. Like she is always just the most supportive and the most willing to jump in to help in any situation. And so we wanted to take that and apply it to like mentorship in terms of other Rangers, because that's something we never got to see in the show. And in terms of like the death that you're referring to in Power Rangers Once and Always, which is a Netflix special they did a couple years ago, I would say that provided sort of an endpoint for where we could take that character and pluck her out of her time stream to end up where she is in Unlimited. So I don't know when this issue is dropping, but in issue 1, you'll sort of get a little bit more clarity on where she's at and where she comes from.
How much?
I feel like that was a little vague, but trust me, it's going to be cool.
It's not out yet. You should be vague.
We don't expect spoilers.
The comics are one of those like weird sort of interviews where it's like we encourage, we're not here for stories, man. Sometimes you have to encourage vagueness.
Yeah, it's weird because like you have to like make it sound exciting, but also you don't want to give away all of your tricks yet. But I do think like we're trying to take big swings. We're trying to like push things forward, both like in the scope of what the Power Rangers world can be, what kinds of stories you can do, but also like moving forward, Power Rangers, I guess they're working on like a reboot or something, but like the series as we knew it ended, and like that's a bummer, but also it's given us 30 years of toys to play with, and that's kind of our mission statement. The pitch that we gave to Boom was like, we're just going to dump out all the toys and smash them together in a way that makes sense. And so hopefully like that plays out in the way that we do this book.
Much, if at all, are you intersecting with the other Rangers books that are coming out through Boom right now?
So ours is definitely like within the world of the Mighty Morphin book, and I think to start those connections are not totally irrelevant, but as the books goes on, I think you'll find that they dovetail pretty nicely.
Uh,
Another
so you
another
meant
vague answer, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
no.
We want to like make sure that they're all their own thing, but I do think it's important that they have connective tissue. Not necessarily like crossovers and stuff like that, but clear that it's like happening in the same time frame.
Yeah.
That so like what that means is essentially if you've read Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #1, which is great, Marguerite's killing it. That is like 10 years after the original team. Like they disbanded, got back together 10 years later. And so that's happening while Unlimited is happening on this other planet, like across the galaxy. So those things are happening at the same time. But the difference is that Unlimited can pull in Rangers from any time in Ranger history, including the future. So it's very like Doctor Who, timey-wimey kind of stuff. But I think it's the benefit is that like that's built into the DNA of Power Rangers is that it's not hard sci-fi. It's not like we don't need a whole lot of, it has to make sense, but it doesn't need to be like Christopher Nolan tight. You know what I mean? Which is nice because I think sometimes you can get bogged down in that stuff, and that's not what I want from comics. I just like I want to see the cool stuff. I don't need to know how it happened. you know?
Forget it, Jake. It's Power Rangers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not like a negative thing or like dismissing the franchise or anything. I think that's like part of the inherent fun of it is that it doesn't worry too much about the continuity of all of the things together, you know?
On a lighter pop culture reference, admit to yourself it's just a show. You should really
Yeah.
just relax.
Yeah, for sure. And I've always been that way. And I understand that like some readers, some fans aren't that way, which is also totally fine. But for me, it's like story always trumps continuity in any universe. Like I don't care if this issue contradicts an issue from 25 years ago in like Batman or whatever it is. It's just like it's cool now, and that's enough for me. And so that's kind of the approach that I take with this sort of thing, but not like disrespecting continuity or anything like that, but just like if there's a better opportunity there and it maybe doesn't completely jive with something else, I'm going to go for the better opportunity and the cooler story, the cooler image than, oh, we can't do that because this one time in that one episode, this happened, you know?
That's what no prizes are for, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just
Joey.
baked into the nature of superhero comics. It's just how it's always been.
As long as you don't have Batman coming in with two Uzis shooting everybody, the fine details are
Yeah,
fungible.
for
As
sure.
long as you're not, it's like unless it's the absolute universe, of course. Unless it's like you can't change. Yes, Thomas and Martha Wayne died in that alley, but
Right.
you can change that it was autumn and not winter if for some reason the story better suits that. That's
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting that you say that. I have a friend who is a teacher, and I do like a guest it's not a guest lecture, but a guest presentation for his college class, and it's essentially about Batman as a brand. A lot of my background in like day job stuff is in brand management or approvals and that sort of thing. And I have found that like my experience working in a corporate world with brand approvals and all this kind of stuff has actually been very helpful as applied to work for hire projects, because ultimately that's basically what it is. Like Batman is a brand that you are contributing to, but it has to adhere to like certain things. And that's true whether it's Batman or the Power Rangers or Starbucks. Like they all have like their sort of brand guidelines. And so I do think that having that sort of experience and knowledge has been helpful, but also helpful in finding like the lanes that are sort of like in between. Like I don't think that they would reject this because there's no like, it's technically within the bounds of the brand, but it's not something that I've seen before. And so I feel like that's kind of where we're trying to operate in Unlimited.
You had a pitch in one of the DC round robin tournaments a few years ago for a Wildcat miniseries.
Sure did.
Is there is there anything you're able to tell us about sort of what might have been there?
Well, first I'll say that Kenny Porter won that round robin. So like I would just like to just to congratulate myself for not holding that against him when we were partnered together.
That was the Connor Kent series, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was great. I didn't even get to like past the first round, so like we never even got to announce like that we were part of it. And I just did it years later when I was like, oh yeah, this happened, and no one ever knew. But basically, it was going to be about, there's a version of Wildcat where he has literally 9 lives. And so I wanted to do a story that was essentially him on his last life. Like next time he's in a fight, if he loses, he's going to die. Like this, like he's at the end of his rope. He's run out of his lucky chances. So it was going to be like a story like about that, while also like going back and exploring his relationships with the people that he's trained in the DC universe. He's very important to like Batman and Selena Kyle, and like having him give a lesson to Damian Wayne sounded like a blast. So it was like kind of that stuff, and just like really just honing in on how important Wildcat is to like multiple generations of DC heroes. And that's not to say it could never happen, but that seemed like a perfect sort of project for that round robin thing, where it's fan favorite characters who often don't get spotlight that they deserve. But I don't know, Wildcat's around in the JSA series right now, which is good. But he's just so fun. It's just like a unique character in the DC world. I feel like someday, I hope. I haven't let go of it, that's for sure.
So as we kind of start to wind down here, how are the pets doing?
Thank you for asking. I don't think anyone's up here with me at the moment, but everyone's good. Our cat Crouton had a little medical issue a few months ago, but he's doing better and he's back to being himself. So
always good to hear.
We're all good over here. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
What is a comic by another creator that you're really enjoying right now?
He's checking the sub piles.
Yeah, let me go to one of my sub piles. Hold on. You know what? I'm going to shout out my editor, Dave, who is also a fantastic writer. He just had this book come out.
Yes.
Throwdown from Ignition Press. I think there's a lot of, he's also from Western Massachusetts, where I'm from. Mm-hmm. So I think we relate a lot on that level. And there's a lot of that element to this book that I identify with, that we were talking about earlier, like just small town, depressed kind of thing. But like sort of like couched within like a really cool, relatable revenge story. So this is something that I'm really enjoying, and I would recommend everyone should pick it up.
We had Dave on the show not that long ago. We were talking about Showdown.
He's like the nicest. He's just like, again, similar to Kenny, like loves comics and just wants to like make and promote good comics, and like that's it, and it's like that shouldn't be refreshing, but it is, and I think that's why we get along so well.
Is there anything else that you got going on that you need to get a plug in for, whether it's other work, signings, convention appearances, anything like that?
Kenny and I will both be at San Diego Comic-Con at the end of July. Boom is doing a Power Rangers panel, so I think it's on Thursday. I know it's a little early to be plotting out Comic-Con schedules, but if you're available, I think it's Thursday at 5 p.m. You should come by. Marguerite will also be there, and we're going to just talk about everything that's going on. Other than that, I'm going to be doing another Kickstarter soon, and we'll be launching the pre-launch page for that this week probably. That is for Shit Kickers, which I think we got talked about as well, if I'm remembering. But we're bringing that back on Kickstarter after the Zoop experiment that didn't go as I hoped. So that's going to be coming up this summer, and then just plugging away on new stuff that to be announced later. But yeah, we'll definitely let you know if there's anything else I need to plug or shill. But keeping busy, and I'm very excited for what's to come.
Excellent. Well, this has been a fantastic time. Final question as we release you back into the world. How can people,
Sure.
or how should people follow you online to keep up with Power Rangers Unlimited and Killer Influences and everything else that you got going on?
If you go to joeyesposito.com, it'll take you to like my Linktree page, and from there you can subscribe to my newsletter, which is the best way to keep in touch or learn about new things that are coming out. I am on Blue Sky and Instagram. Minimal activity around there these days. Social media, I think, is dying, but I'm also there as well if you're interested in pet pictures and comic books. That's basically all I can offer. But definitely please subscribe to the Soup Dad Comics newsletter. That's the future.
Joey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's always a blast.
That's it for this week's show. As a reminder, you can find the Comics XF interview podcast at Comics XF, along with our sister podcasts Battle of the Atom and Bat Chat with Matt and Will. You can listen to the Comics XF interview podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Audible, and at comicsxf.com, where new episodes move Tuesday mornings. You can support Comics XF at patreon.com/comicsxf, where a $1 donation gets you a shout out at the end of every episode of the Comics XF interview podcast. A $2 donation gets you early access to this podcast and a shout out at the end of every episode. A $3 donation gets you access to our monthly bonus podcast, Our Son Pete, a deep dive into the comic appearances of British mutant super spy Pete Wisdom. A $5 donation gets you access to Our Son Pete and a Pete Wisdom Hot Claw sticker designed by Kevin Newbern, or an update to the Xavier Files Mutant Master Rankings at Comics XF. A $25 donation lets you request a primer, one of our custom reading guides for a series, character, or creator, and a $50 donation lets you advertise on the show. You can also go to patreon.com/comicsxf to order copies of the Comics XF zine, featuring some of the best articles from the history of the site. Digital copies are $10, physical copies are $15, and supplies are limited. Big thanks to our patrons: Kaylee Post, Nathan Elwood, Mark Danielson, Silas X, Jack Adams, Sean Shambly, Matt
McThorny,
Buddy Nooning, Jake Murray, Zach Quaintance, Joel Elod, Lisa Slack, Will Redman, Tobias Carroll, Liz Large, Asimov Fangirl, Carla Pacheco, and Shelf Dust. You're all special, and we love you. You can follow Comics XF on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram at Comics XF. Me at Daniel Peak Wrote on Blue Sky, and Matt Lazowitz at MattLaz1013 on Blue Sky. And until next week, remember, Batman co-creator Bob Kane's gravestone says the following: God bestowed a dream upon Bob Kane. Blessed with divine inspiration and rich imagination, Bob created a legacy known as Batman. Introduced in a May 1939 comic book, Batman grew from a tiny acorn into an American icon. A hand of God creation, Batman and his world personified the eternal struggle of good versus evil, with God's laws prevailing in the end. Bob Kane, Bruce Wayne, Batman. They are one and the same. Bob infused his dual identity character with his own attributes: goodness, kindness, compassion, sensitivity, generosity, intelligence, integrity, courage, purity of spirit, a love for all mankind. Batman is known as the Dark Knight, but through his deeds he walks in the light of a higher power. as did his creator, Bob Kane, beloved husband, father, grandfather, in loving memory. With Bill Finger.